Hello everyone. Today in this video we are discussing constructors in Java. Constructors. It is a special type of method which is used to initialize the values of the member variables of an object. It is called a constructor because it constructs the values at the time of object creation. So whenever you are creating the object, it will initialize your member variables of an object. It is not necessary to write a constructor for a class. Why? It is because Java compiler creates a default constructor if your class does not have any constructor. So if you are not writing any constructor for your class, Java compiler calls default constructor whenever you are creating an object of that class. Now let's see rules for creating Java constructor. First rule, constructor name must be same as its class name. And second rule is a constructor must have no explicit return type. That means, for example, here I have taken class cylinder. This radius and height are members of the class, and this public cylinder. This is a constructor which I am using to initialize the values of radius and height whenever I will create the object of this class. So whenever I will create the object of this class, my radius and height I want to set to 1. So I will create a constructor for that. And how to create a constructor? Public name of the class I have to use as a method here. So cylinder bracket, and this constructor doesn't have any return type. That's why there is no need to write the return type. So public cylinder, and I will set initial values according to my requirement. So this is one of the constructor. Now we'll see what are the different types of constructor which we can create in a Java program. There are two types of constructor, default constructor, or we can call it as a non-argument constructor, and another one is parameterized constructor. Let's see. Every time an object is created using new keyword, at that time whenever we will create an object, at least one constructor is called. It is called a default constructor. Now, if you are not defining any constructor, if there is no constructor available in your class, what happens? Java compiler provides default constructor. So whenever you will create an object using new keyword, it will call default constructor. If default constructor is available in your class, if you have defined it, then it will call that constructor. Otherwise, Java compiler will call its default constructor to set the initial values of the members of that class. Now, we'll see example for this type of constructor. First, create a class. Suppose class is cylinder class. Now members of this class are radius and height. Now I want to set the initial values. Whenever I will create the object, these members should have some initial value. So for that, first type is non-parameterized constructor. That is, I will create the constructor. So whenever you will create the constructor, you have to use the same name as the class name, cylinder. It should not have any return type, so there is no need of return type. Then I will initialize the value radius is equal to height is equal to 1. Another type of constructor is parameterized constructor. Means what? Whenever I will create an object, I will set some values whenever I will create the object. That means at the time of object creation, I will pass the value of radius and height, and I will store it in R and H. Then I will assign this R value to the radius and this H value to the height, our members of our class. Now to use this class, I need to create its object. So here I will write application class cylinder test, and within that this main function is there. So in this main function, I will create object of cylinder class. Cylinder C1 is the reference. New cylinder is the object of this cylinder class. So whenever I will create the object, these members and methods of this class get assigned to this object. So what is the initial values of this radius and height whenever object get created? Now it depends upon which type of object we are creating. Here whenever we are creating object, we are not passing any parameter, means we will call default constructor, or we can say non-parameterized constructor. Here this default constructor set the radius and height to 1. So whenever I will create the object, its radius and height is set to 1. You can check this by printing its value. Now if I am not writing this default constructor, what will happen? Still this, whenever I will create the object, it will, Java compiler will call default constructor. Each Java compiler has its own default constructor. It will set the radius and height to the null. That means 0. Now another type is this one. In the application class, if I will create the object cylinder reference C2 new cylinder, and I am passing here two parameters 15 and 20. At that time, it will search for the constructor which has parameters. So parameterized constructor will get called whenever I am creating the object with passing its parameter. So this R will store this 15 and H store this 20, and this R will get assigned to the radius, our member of our class, and H will get assigned to the height. So in this case your height and radius will be this passed parameters. So whenever we are creating the object with the parameter passing, parameter constructor get called, and whenever we are calling the, or we are creating the object with this non-parameter constructor, it will call default constructor. If in your class there is no default constructor mentioned, it will call, Java compiler will call its own default constructor to initialize radius and height or member of a class. So this is about constructor type. One more constructor type is copy constructor. In Java, a copy constructor is a special type of constructor that creates an object using another object. So whenever you are creating the object, you are passing another object of the same class. So it returns duplicate copy of existing object. Sometimes we face a problem where we require to create the exact copy of an existing object of the class. There is also a condition: if we have made any changes in the copy, it should not reflect in the original one, or vice versa. For such a cases, Java provides concept of copy constructor. Let's see how to implement it. We all know about this. This one is parameterized constructor. This is the cylinder class, same as the previous. Now I will create a copy constructor. For copy constructor, syntax is your same name of the class cylinder, and into the bracket here again name of your class and P. So P is one of the object, it will get the object values. Let's see how. Here application class, where there is a static void main function. Now I will create the object cylinder C2 is equal to new cylinder. Now here I am passing two parameters, means it will call this parameterized constructor. So this C2 is one of the object. You can check this value, what is your height and radius. Now one more object I will create, cylinder C2 is equal to new cylinder C2. Now here this C2 is nothing but this object. That means while creating another object, I am passing the previous object which I have. So creating this, while creating this new object, I am passing this C2 object at the time of creation the object. So what happens because of this? Whatever the values of the members of the class for this C2 object will get passed here, and I will assign these radius and this height to this radius and height of this new C4 object. So here C4 is exact copy of C2 object. So this is copy constructor. You can check the value of C2 height and C2 radius and C4 height and radius. It will be same because of copy constructor. So check the syntax. In the bracket, instead of this parameter, we are creating the variable to receive the object. That's why in the bracket, name of the class and variable. And while assigning p dot radius, p dot height. So this is copy constructor. So in this video, we have discussed different types of constructor. Default constructor. If your program or class does not have any constructor, Java compiler will call a default constructor to set the values of a member of a class while creating the object. Then non-parameterized constructor. To set your own initial values, we can use this non-parameterized constructor. Another is parameterized constructor. At the time of object creation, you can pass or you can set the values of a member by passing the parameter. That is called a parameterized constructor. One more special type of constructor is copy constructor. Here, whenever you are creating an object, you are passing another object. So, you are creating exact copy of one object. So that is nothing but copy constructor. So this is all about constructors in Java. In the next video, we will write a program and run it based on a constructor.